Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Welcome to the Yahoo Sports NFL podcast. I am Yahoo senior NFL writer Terez Paylor. Here, my main man and fellow senior NFL writer Charles Robinson. And Charles, they always say you can't keep a good man down. But I tell you what, man, Tom Brady, ultimate note taker. He definitely took some notes from those previous losses to the Saints, because this Tampa Bay Buc team looked a heck of a lot different yesterday than they did in the previous two games against the Saints, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, it makes all the difference. It's interesting because this is really what you signed Tom for. I mean, we can say whatever we want about the regular season. Those two losses don't matter. The guy's got 32 postseason wins for a reason, which is an insane number. I got Joe Montana's second at 16. You go out, the all-in gamble that they talked about with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is the time frame that they were really pushing their chips on. And for Tom Brady to get him to the NFC title game, and let's be honest, really was the defense. I mean, the defense lifted that team, and then Tom, was opportunistic and made the plays that he had to down the stretch. But I think you can look at the Bucs and say, hey, it paid off. This gamble paid off to be a step away from the Super Bowl at this stage. Not only the Antonio Brown gamble and the Leonard Fournette gamble and the Tom Brady gamble and everything else that they did this offseason to take this franchise where it is now, and for Tom to go to his ninth conference title game in the last 10 years is just stupid.
Huge shout out here to the Bucs offensive line too, because I think we got to know here. Bruce Arians was 0-4 as a member of the Tampa Bay Bucs versus the Saints, and in their two previous losses, I think Brady was sacked like 11 times. Right. He was sacked 11 times in their 5 losses this year. On Sunday night, just 1 sack, right, and 3 quarterback hits. So the key for the Bucs, as always, is protecting Tom Brady and those tackles, Donovan Smith, Tristan Wirfs, the whole line. Like, that is the key here. And now we get really an awesome kind of NFC championship game setting up that we'll talk about more on the midweek podcast. But, Aaron Rodgers versus Tom Brady, like, this is good for football. And so is the one in the AFC. We'll get to that in a second. But legacy-wise, I think this has a chance to be another legacy game, especially for both these quarterbacks. And honestly, if you're comparing these guys, because we do that to all of them, I think Rodgers is the one who needs it more. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, in terms of the overall legacy, obviously Rodgers doesn't have the hardware that Tom does. But I think, for Aaron to have the season of perfection that he has, and again, I'll reiterate, I really truly believe this may be the best season the guy's ever put together. For him to cap that off with, say, an MVP, to cap that off with a Super Bowl run and maybe a Super Bowl win, changes the dynamic of the conversation, I think, around Aaron Rodgers from great quarterback in his era, one of the best in his era, to, I think if you can notch those 2 Super Bowls and you've won league MVP and you've done everything else that Rodgers has, you got to start to talk about that guy in the greatest ever echelon. And to me, that's really what's on the table. Tom's done everything. Like, Tom's going to be there no matter what. We're going to talk about him in the GOAT conversation for the rest of time. Aaron's
just like
not,
Montana.
Yeah, just like Montana. Aaron's in the great conversation. He's in the iconic conversation. But I think once, if he notches that second Super Bowl and wins another MVP, you start to talk about where does he fit in the greatest ever.
Absolutely. You need 2 in this league to really earn that respect, because so many of the great ones have won 2, whether it's Troy Aikman or Terry Bradshaw, or like you mentioned, Joe Montana,
John Elway.
John Elway. Like, that matters, man. It really does. So now there have been some greats that just won 1. Like, that's happened too. But one way to solidify yourself kind of in that mix is by winning multiple. And I think that's a great segue into the other side of this quarterback equation in this game was, Drew Brees had a chance this year too to kind of get the second one. And I think he needed that. But all in all, great career. No shortage of reports about this likely being it for him. And I think it was interesting because there were, first of all, the pick 6, shouldn't have thrown the ball, but man, the coverage by Sean Murphy-Bunting was really on point on Michael Thomas. And I don't know how often you see Michael Thomas get covered like that on a short route. Like, so either he's not feeling great or like Murphy-Bunting saw it all the way. But either way, that was a big play in the game, man. And, one more thing that stands out to me is that Brees threw 3 interceptions in this game, but, he wasn't sacked, and he was only hit 3 times. Right. And that's kind of damning a little bit as far as like, what he still has left. Just where did you come out on that? Because the fact that he played poorly but didn't really get hit a lot not like the greatest sign about, in this moment, just not the greatest sign, might be time.
Definitely, I think that so from what I was told, I remember last year when their season ended, I had someone in the organization tell me that Drew wanted to retire at the end of last season, and that he initially even told ownership, told Sean Payton, I think I'm retiring. And they said, work yourself through it, go through your process, see how you feel. And he changed his mind. He had the TV offer on the table. It was clear that money was going to be there for him and that opportunity. And he decided to give it one more run. A couple of things I think we've seen from him this season is you can see him going down that Peyton Manning-esque kind of backslide. It's just you don't see the arm strength's not the same. You just start to see the things that we've expected from, say, a Tom Brady that haven't necessarily happened to Tom, at least not to this degree. You're starting to see it sink in for Drew. And I don't think he was ever healthy after all the broken ribs and that whole ordeal. I think people are crazy if they think, oh, this guy can just sit out a couple of weeks and then come back and he's going to be fine. There are guys who jam their shoulders and literally ride it out an entire season with a screwed up shoulder. So there's no way you break ribs like that and then come back and, hey, everything's just hunky-dory. So I have, in my mind, I watched that game and I thought, this guy doesn't look healthy to me. It's funny because I think back to when I watched Aaron Rodgers last season, and there were times that I thought in 2019, Aaron Rodgers doesn't look completely healthy. And then you saw him come back this year and what he could do with a completely healthy season where he wasn't hit a lot. I think Drew is going to retire. I expect that report to be accurate. And, it's an unbelievable career. I'm sure he will look back and reflect and think he left something on the table. Most guys tend to when they get that close and have the kind of talent they do around them. But nothing to be ashamed of. And I give him all the credit in the world for trying to play through, again, what I ultimately think were injuries that just did not get better. Even with a couple of weeks off, he was never going to be right after that. I truly believe that.
Yeah, no. And I think it also speaks to his performance and the way it's gone for them. Like, it speaks to the importance, like in today's football, like you do have to be able to push it down the field consistently.
Yes.
It's just too easy to play defense if you can't push it down the field consistently. Well, it's not easy because playing defense in today's game is not easy, but it's easier. And, 4.7 yards per attempt, that's not good enough. I also don't think it was a coincidence that their deep shot that they hit on was thrown by Jameis on a trick play. I just listen. I mean, it is what it is on that point. And it's a great career. He's a future Hall of Famer. But, once again, we kind of see in today's NFL, you better be able to push the football downfield, or when it really matters and you face really good teams, it might start to catch up to you. And it probably will, unless you have a great defense that's on its A game in the playoffs and you get a little bit of luck, man. So, that leads the Tampa Bay Bucks into the next thing, right? But before we get to their showdown against the Packers, who won their game against the Rams, let's talk about the other game on Sunday. And this is a game I know a lot of listeners are interested in. The Kansas City Chiefs beat the Cleveland Browns 22-17, a game that had no shortage of drama. I mean, it started off the way I kind of thought it was, where the Chiefs had this intensity about getting off to a good start after all three of their playoff wins last year needed to be comebacks. So I'm like, okay, they got off to a great start. They took a 16-3 lead. And then weird, old school Chiefs-y stuff started happening, right? Patrick Mahomes gets hurt. Harrison Butker misses a field goal. And I definitely feel like this is one of those instances where the fact you've already won a title kind of prevents the feeling of, oh no, here we go again. It really helped, because that was an old school kind of Chiefs loss. And, I think the defense showed a lot of resiliency. Obviously, Andy Reid made some interesting calls, including a great call, right? Just, I was impressed by their ability to kind of stay through it, but we'll see what happens, because obviously they head into the AFC Championship game against the Bills, and they need Patrick Mahomes for that game. Chad Henne pulled some plays out of his tail, and shout out to him because that was great. But obviously you need Patrick Mahomes, and what I can definitely say is that there is definitely a sense of optimism. He's going to be ready to go on Sunday. So there's a lot that can still happen. But no, there's definitely a sense of optimism that, he'll be ready to go. And I can go in a little bit of detail about why I think that when I get your opinion on how the Chiefs are able to pull this thing out.
Well, I mean, the fumble through the end zone was fortuitous. I mean, but the hit caused the fumble. I mean, there's a reason why that happened. It wasn't just the guy sticking the ball out. Rashard Higgins got plastered on that play and made a poor decision to stick the ball out. And, it is a rule that probably will continue to get a closer look, just considering how punitive it ultimately is. But I felt like that was one of those moments that swung the game. Yeah. I think that the Henne scramble,
it was an awesome play, man.
I mean, 34.
Didn't see that coming.
No, it's just
Isn't
ridiculous.
He 36? That was awesome.
And I had guys texting me when that happened and just flipping out. How could you let him do that? All this. And I'm like,
we can't plan for that.
There's of all the guys on earth, I would not have expected to do that. Chad Henne is one of them. There's just no way I expect that guy to make that play. And to me, that was, and then, you tweeted about it. The follow-up play in fourth down, was, the sprint out. I mean, it was a ballsy play. It was a ballsy set of plays to put that away. And I think that this comes down to something that you and I talked about, earlier in the season when we went through the whole tiff about running the football. This didn't have so much to do with running the football, but you have to be a team that can weather the unexpected consequence of something like Pat Mahomes going down, which is the worst case scenario in the fourth quarter of a game like this, to lose him like that. But this is, if you're going to win a Super Bowl, sometimes you just got to endure hitting walls that you don't see coming. Obviously the Chiefs were able to do that. I want to give a shout out to the Browns, who did not stop fighting. There was, and in a weird way, I think for the Cleveland Browns, they walk away with something in this one, because this is one where it gets to a certain point. You think Browns are getting buried. I think a lot of Cleveland Browns fans thought it's over. We're going to get destroyed in this game. And that
the Matthew interception, early in the third quarter. That one should have been like, all right, here we go. This quarter touchdown is over. And then Butker misses the field goal. And Cleveland really responded with a lot of life there. But my thing is, I feel like they would have done that anyway. Like, this is a team that's proven to be resilient throughout the course of the season. And I really respect and like what they've got going on there. This feels to me like the same loss in a lot of ways that the Bills had last year to Houston, where it's close. You feel like you could have done some things better. It breaks your heart, but you come back better. Right. And we know they're going to improve the defense. Like, we know they're going to do that. Like, Cleveland's going to be around for a long time because they finally got that continuity in the front office that fits the strengths, that understands how to build a team that fits the strengths of what their players can do. So I'm actually really excited about Cleveland's future. I am. Like, I think this is the loss that helps them build future runs. As long as they can keep things together. Just from my perspective. The winner of the game was the Chiefs, and now they become the first team to host 3 straight conference championship games since the 2002-2004 Eagles, also coached by Andy Reid. I think we agree it's going to be important for Mahomes to be available for that game. I think it was interesting that Andy Reid went out of his way after the game to specifically not use the word concussion. I think his language on it suggests the feeling that that yes, he's in concussion protocol, but there's a sense that it's not that might not be like he'd be back in time. That's just my opinion. This is a guy that's pretty flexible. This is a guy that has been training for like flexibility, and I think that will help him because remember he had the toe injury too in that game. Anyway, this is a dude that's proven to be able to like come back faster from stuff other guys wouldn't. So like I actually wouldn't be surprised at all if he's ready to go. It's the AFC Championship game too against Josh Allen. Okay, come on, these guys have been circling each other as rivals friendly for like a while. The league needs this matchup to happen. The Chiefs need this matchup to happen. I expect him to be able to go.
I don't think this is going to have a lot to do with healing or feeling better or what. I mean, he's going. I mean, like I don't, like this doesn't. I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but I mean, it's a situation where no matter how he feels, he cheats to make sure he's out there. Okay, when I say he cheats to make sure he's out there, whatever he needs to do to pass whatever tests he needs to pass are going to get passed. There's just no way in hell. I don't see it happening. I don't see the player letting it happen. I don't see the coaching staff letting it happen. And some people are going to say, well, there's, this is, if that's true, that's part of the NFL's barbarism. No, it's not really. I mean, it's part of guys feeling like they owe the other 52 guys in a locker room something. They feel like they owe the coaching staff something. And that's Pat Mahomes. Like Pat Mahomes isn't going to sit there and go, oh, no, it's still, this is the problem. No, I mean, there's just no way. It was for everyone to come out after the game the way that they did. Well, I guess not everyone. Andy came out. I got a text from somebody as well who's just like, he's going to, come on, he's going to be there. But it's indicative of how quickly they wanted to fast track this back to he's going to play next week. So, and I don't have any problem with a guy taking it upon himself to say, I'm going to be out there. It's the AFC title game. The Super Bowl's on the line. You're going to have obviously that natural break after the Super Bowl. This has been a hell of a season, by the way. I think you're going to have certain individuals who get to this point in the year who, having gone through everything that teams have gone through with all the COVID protocols, the 50 million things, and that you had to jump through, you're going to probably push it a little harder, I think, at this point in the season because so much more went into getting here than ever before. And that's why these 4 teams said it all season long. To me, this is going to be one of the greatest Super Bowls ever, regardless of who wins it. For these 4 teams to make it to this point says a lot about 4 franchises.
Well, the reason I bring up, the way that he trains and some of these other things is because the track record of him playing through stuff and the track record of him coming back quickly is already there. Like it's already laid, like it's there. You can see it. And people close to him over the years have described him as a warrior. So, I think that's something that he probably embraces too. And I think, that's yet another reason why it would take a lot to keep a man like that out of the biggest game of the season to this point, especially when you're going for history and legacy. So, I think, again, they still got to get through the week. He's got to get through the concussion protocol, but there's definitely a sense of optimism he's going here.
I remember the year that the Patriots beat the Rams in the Super Bowl a couple years ago. I was at the combine and I had drinks with a guy, and he told me that Tom Brady's shoulder that entire season was screwed up. Entire season. And he never appeared on the injury report, and we had a little follow-up conversation after that. And from my understanding, it was because Tom didn't tell anybody. Tom didn't tell. Remember, Tom works with his own people. He has his own sort of regimen that he goes through physically. But yeah, I heard that entire season, Tom's shoulder was screwed up. He didn't tell the team. And this is the guys are like this. Tom Brady's like this. Aaron Rodgers is like this. Pat Mahomes. You get guys who are on a certain level at that position. We just watched Drew Brees, who I'm telling you, I swear to God, there's no way he was healthy. There's no way he was okay in that game. Physically, he did whatever he needed to do to get on the field. But, certain guys who get into this echelon, there's a reason why there's separation between these guys and Jay Cutler, who had all the
level of competitive.
Yeah, I mean, look, Jay Cutler had all the physical skills in the world. Yeah, he had a fire hose for an arm, okay? He had all these different things. But there was a clear separation between what elevates some guys and what keeps other guys hitting a ceiling and not really reaching all the potential that they have, and other guys maximizing it and exceeding it. And, Mahomes is one of those guys. I would argue that pretty much all the quarterbacks we're going to see in these title games are all these guys.
If you talk to all these guys, they all kind of have that competitive edge to them when they get on
even
the
Josh
field.
Allen. That's one of the components of the Josh Allen game where you're like, wow.
There's no even about it. Like, Josh is – the competitiveness in that cat is real, man. Like, it's no coincidence that in my opinion, these are the 4 quarterbacks left. All these guys have that edge to them. And I also think that the Mahomes injury, and I ended up writing this too, man. I feel like the Mahomes injury was also or at least the scare, it's also like a really good reminder of why it's so hard to repeat. So you can have the championship coaching, you can bring everybody back, because this team, I feel like, and look, you've been a national writer longer than me. I feel like this team, this has been about as good of a bet to go back to back as we've had since the 2004 Patriots. So, in a lot of ways, there was a feeling of inevitability around this team. But in one instance, you saw that in this game, where it's never been bigger, faster, stronger, you get through a whole season and you're taking every team's best shot. Nothing is guaranteed, man, because that's all it takes is a Mahomes injury to ruin that. That's all it takes. So it's a reminder how special that is if it does come, if you can repeat. And it's no coincidence that the teams that find a way to repeat in the modern era are all-time great teams or all-time great franchises. Like the 2 years the Broncos won, 97 and 98. Really, really good teams, right? The 2004 Patriots might be the best of the bunch of all of them. You know what I mean? So
right.
It takes a lot. And what I wanted to do is kind of set the stage for you find a way to win it here. If they find a way to win a Super Bowl, you need luck. And that's one ingredient you need. But you also better be a great team, to go back to back.
And something else, too, that I think is underrated, I don't really hear anybody talking about this today, is this is the upside of sitting guys in week 17.
That's interesting.
Because Chad Henne walks out on the field, guess what? Not having gotten game at, but what? This guy did. He got an entire game to himself in week 17. That's why. Yeah, you know what? And you can't tell me that didn't matter for Chad Henne in this game. You can't tell me that the fact that he just played did not matter to him. Absolutely, it mattered. You don't want, in any other situation, teams that have to play their full squads in week 17, and then you got a backup who's running on the field who hasn't seen a snap of game action really all season long. That's a disaster. So that's a very underplayed component of being good enough to get, hey, your backup quarterback some time in week 17, and God forbid your starting quarterback goes down in the game. Your backup quarterback's like, no, I'm good, man. I took a week of practice. I had a whole game to myself. I got snaps. I got hit. And remember, that's part of the component too, as a backup quarterback. Guys go in and there's an acclimation process to just getting hit repeatedly in an NFL game. Well, Chad Henne had a whole game to go through that. I think that really helped the Chiefs out. And it's weird that people just kind of forget, wow, what a lucky thing that this guy happened to play an entire game, within the last couple of weeks.
I also think that the way that game played out before we move on is also a really good example of why getting your first championship matters when you're in the middle of your championship window, because a lot of those calls are made easier by the fact that you already kind of won one, so you're
Sure.
really just like the fourth in short call, the fourth and inches call. That becomes a lot easier when you just won last year. It takes a lot of pressure off you as far as being able to just go play without worrying about just you get what I'm saying.
There's an element of house money. Like once if you win it early enough, you don't have the pressure and I mean, let's be real here. Take that same fourth down play and put it in the last of the Eagles, NFC championship appearances under Andy. At that point, it's like, oh my God, we're here again. Like, there's a element of pressure that builds when you have not had that payoff. And you're right. I do think there's a looseness from a coaching standpoint that you're willing to roll the dice a little bit more when as I said, you have a little bit of house money. You've done it. So if you fail, you didn't fail and you've been to the mountaintop once. It's not like, you're sitting there and you're crushed and everybody's talking about, can you ever get it done? And it just changes the entire tenor of a franchise when you're able to win one early enough the way that they were with Patrick Mahomes.
Agreed. And I think the team that was definitely paying attention to the Chiefs game on Sunday was the Buffalo Bills, who really went into an old-fashioned slugfest against the Baltimore Ravens and came out on top 17-3. First of all, awesome seeing a divisional round playoff game in Buffalo again. Just a great football atmosphere. Yeah, really awesome. That was awesome, wasn't it? Yeah. Second of all, I think I mentioned this earlier, but Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, this is good for the league, man. These guys are going to be, I think we spent a lot of time talking about who's going to be Mahomes' rival. But Josh Allen has as strong of a claim to that as anybody right now, right? Josh Allen just went head to head against the reigning MVP and won. Right? He just went head to head against Lamar Jackson and won in this game. Old fashioned slobber knocker. I really appreciated it, but I think Buffalo, the defense, that's what really stands out to me right now. Buffalo's weakness up to this point kind of had been his defense, just because their offense had been so strong, specifically its run defense. But, they just faced a team that's really, really strong running the football. And for the most part, they held them in check. This defense has gotten healthy at the right time. And I think the Bills feel that they have a sense of destiny that's going to make them difficult to beat next week. Unless the Chiefs play well, this is a game the Chiefs are going to have to play well to win. And they're going to need Mahomes for the whole way, because Josh Allen is not afraid to go head to head against Patrick Mahomes. He thinks he's as good as Mahomes.
Yeah, I mean, their ability to affect Lamar. I mean, they hit him. They beat him up. I mean, he got hit a lot in this game. They turned him over. They were physical, not just with Lamar Jackson, but I mean, across the board. There were a number of fumbles. And the Ravens even had some turnover luck where they weren't losing, every opportunity they had to lose a turnover, but still that affects you mentally. And like you said, I think the environment really raised the Bills. I don't think there's an element of, as I said, looseness with winning a Super Bowl, but with Josh Allen, there's almost an element of sometimes I look at him and I wonder if he really just isn't affected by what's on the line. Like he just doesn't seem he just carries himself in a way where he doesn't seem like a guy who feels a lot of pressure. Let me put it that way. He just does not feel nothing feels like too big, and I don't know if that's because of where he came from, the way that he arrived into college football, the way he developed as a player.
It's because he's really confident. It's because he's really confident. I guess that's why. He just has that. Some guys, some guys just kind of have that innate, I'm gonna figure it out thing. He got that. I can tell you that right now. So, what's interesting is that he didn't blow the doors off these guys though. No. It was a complete team win. He struggled a little bit on downfield throws, but I was impressed to see the Bills really take care of business on both sides of the ball against an offense that had been playing well, as well as almost any offense all season long. They really did a nice job shutting those guys down defensively.
Yeah, and it's the ability's been there for the Bills to do that. I mean, we talked about when this season began, we talked a lot about Josh Allen, but there was a lot of exclusivity paid to the Bills defense, knowing, what Sean McDermott was going to be able to come be able to do as this group grew, the talent additions that had been made. A lot of that gets overshadowed by the acquisition of Stephon Diggs and the development of Josh Allen. But still, this is, you're talking about a guy who's the coach, who's at his core, he's a defensive guy. And if you're going to draw, have a week where somebody's going to draw something up against Pat Mahomes, it's probably good to have your head guy be a defensive guy. And the Ravens, I don't want to take anything away from them. I thought that the game I saw against the Bills reminded me of the regression we saw, in the middle of the season from the Ravens. I felt like there was, they slipped back to sort of the mean in this game. And again, they were playing an opponent who forced them into that situation. There's no doubt. I mean, the passing game wasn't the same. I thought that the Bills were extremely physical against the run. It just wasn't the sort of run dominant offense that we had seen the last month with the opportunistic passing from the Ravens. And I think that the Bills were able to scheme it correctly. I'm curious whether or not they can pull that off against Mahomes.
I think, and I love the fact you said that, because that leads right to my next thing. We're going to talk about these games heavily on the midweek podcast, but one thing I do want to say, interesting dilemma now for Buffalo, because the best way to play the Chiefs defensively is to rush forward and play coverage behind them.
Right.
And so in a normal situation, say Patrick Mahomes never got hurt, they'd probably make them do that again. Run the ball the way they did earlier this season. Do it with Darrell Williams, because Le'Veon Bell didn't really make an impact. Like, do it with Darrell or Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Make him prove that he can do it. Like, that's the key. But now I definitely think the Mahomes injury is going to lend itself to, okay, when we have opportunities here, whether it's third down, it's time to maybe bring some blitzes they haven't seen before. And blitzing Mahomes is a dicey proposition. Like, all of his interceptions the last couple of years have actually come via coverage when you only rush 3 or 4. So, like, he is as good against the blitz as anybody in football. Just like Josh is, by the way. Josh is outstanding against the blitz. But I do wonder if, because of the injury, if you're Buffalo, maybe you have to take some shots blitzing him and see how he handles it. And then the first time he shreds it, which he probably will, then you go back to, okay, Le'Veon Bell, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Darrell Williams. This game's in your hands. I think it's an interesting dichotomy for Buffalo. I can't wait to see how they defend them.
Yeah, I mean, if I'd be worried if Mahomes, it's a movement issue. If the toe, if it's more of a can he move? Can he set up the way that he wants to set up? If he starts getting hit in his lower body, do you see that limping again? That to me is look. I don't want to. We're in the era of football where you don't want to diminish any head injuries. Okay, you don't. Right. But I tend to believe that, particularly for guys and quarterbacks where a lot of their game is movement and off script stuff. This is crazy to say this, but I mean, if you were to get dinged, to enter concussion protocol versus, hey, you know what, your foot is going to bother you for multiple weeks. I will bet you a lot of quarterbacks will go, you know what, man, I think I can get over if it's a mild concussion. I think I can handle. I know, and then people are going to kill me for that because you can't diminish. And I'm not trying to diminish.
Talking about the player's philosophy.
I'm talking about player philosophies. Yeah, guys don't want injuries that linger. They don't want things that linger for long periods of time, and
especially if it limits the movement. It's right. But the toe thing, I think again that kind of goes to his track record of playing through stuff, and also they got something for that. Like this stuff you can, depending on where it is, like there's stuff that you can do with that. And
I was surprised though.
I was
surprised though how affected he seemed to be at certain point. Like I didn't that to me, I was like, okay, that's a little more, No,
I hear you. Like some of those passes were floating, but like I don't know. You get into the locker room and then you come back, things kind of change sometimes. Is what I would say to that. You got any? Do you have any thoughts? Any other thoughts on the Ravens before we punt on them, man?
It's going to be a really, really interesting offseason with Lamar Jackson because this is the time where
that's right.
You talk about the contract extension. Talk about the contract extension. And, I just think the roller coaster of the season, the unevenness in the passing game, whether or not he's most effective when you can build a strong running game and through that. And then again, the injury, the fact that he was knocked out of this game, and it will always perpetually, it will never end. Quarterbacks who are elusive and run or do whatever, guys, it just over the length of their careers, there are accrued hits, and it's only a matter of time before someone suffers a significant injury as a quarterback, constantly being out there running. It sucks, but it's. I don't know, man. The Ravens got a lot to think about, I think, now to weigh against the fact that this was a guy who won a league MVP. And you can win a league MVP if you don't finish the season in a way that teams, feel great about it. And now this is 2 straight years that I think that, the Ravens probably don't feel great about it.
Titans win helps, though. Helps this cause.
It does. But I go back to last year and then again this year. You expect the stride was not to fall short of an AFC title game. The stride was not to fall short of a Super Bowl. So to me, if that organization is told at the beginning of the year, hey, all things being equal with other franchises, everybody's got to go through COVID protocols. Everybody's going to suffer injuries, whatever. You're not going to make it even to the conference championship game. People would have been disappointed. Lamar Jackson would have been pissed. And yet that's where we are now. So there's a big decision to be made there. And it will be very interesting to see what Lamar's camp does and the Ravens do. And then, even Baker Mayfield and the Browns. That's another guy that's got to have a conversation about an extension.
If I'm Cleveland, I feel okay with it, though. I'm going to come out strongly in favor of that than I did a couple weeks ago. After what they did against the Steelers, after the way they hung in there, I know they didn't get that last drive. I know they were forced to punt. But I feel better. If I'm Cleveland, this is Terez talking. I feel better about that than I did maybe a month ago. And no, I hear you with Lamar. I just think it's important to remember there was also just a week ago we were talking about how he deaded a narrative a little bit. So it helps.
It does, but then you can't, this went about as badly as it could. Let's be honest. It did. I mean, it went about as great as that game was. This was about as bad as it could have been, other than him throwing multiple picks. But he got hurt. He was turned over. He was hit.
Does the fact he wasn't able to finish the game hurt his cause, or does it help it?
No, I think it hurts. I think it hurts. No, I think you factor that in. I would not look Baker and Lamar. I'd push. Let's push. I'd say one more year. I got to see one more year.
Both of them.
Both of them. Absolutely. No, not after seeing what we saw with Carson Wentz, after seeing everything we're seeing with Jared Goff. I don't think any team should sign a quarterback now after 3 years unless it is 3 years of absolute brilliance. I'm talking unfettered success. It basically has to be Mahomes or Deshaun Watson. For me to sign you after 3 years.
Josh is gonna get his.
Or Josh Allen. Yeah, Josh Allen. There's no question Josh had 3 great years. He got better every single year. He built into it. There wasn't this other than, the propensity to occasionally make boneheaded plays over the expanse of the 3 years. There wasn't the, oh my God, he went through this horrific slide. What are we going to do? Oh, the season's in peril. Oh, no, he's great again. Oh, no, what are we doing again? It wasn't this constant seesaw.
It was a constant. I hear you. It was a constant ascending. He constantly ascension for Josh. I got you. I'm just telling you, I feel okay with Baker. What the Browns did, man. Now look, that doesn't mean that's what they're gonna do. You got to be smart about these things and figure out where it goes. But you certainly don't want to make the mistakes that it appears the Rams have made, who fell in the divisional round to the Green Bay Packers 32-18. And after the game, Sean McVay, the great coach, stopped short of saying that Jared Goff will be his quarterback next year. And on the surface, Goff statistics, 21-27, 174, 1 touchdown. Those seem good enough. But the problem is, this season, the Rams defense was really, really good. It was really good. And their run game was actually really good, 4th in DVOA this year. And here's what can't happen, basically. If the Rams run game is 4th in DVOA, its pass game can't be 20th. That doesn't make sense. It's all married. Like the run game is married to the pass game. So a strong run games mean the pass game is going to be pretty good, or at least it should be. And we're going to talk about the Packers certainly because they're the team that won the game. But if you're the Rams, do you come out of that game, Charles? Do you understand why like Sean McVay may have stopped short of co-signing out Goff for 2021 if you're him?
Absolutely. And I had a chance to talk to somebody in the Rams organization after Brad Holmes was hired to be the general manager of the Detroit Lions. Reached out to somebody in the Rams organization. We had that whole conversation. Then we got into Jared Goff, and it was not a pretty conversation. It just wasn't. Like you can see, and this was before this game. They're not happy with his development up until this point. And I said, what is it specifically? What is going on that is causing this problem? And this guy said to me, he is still making mistakes at this stage that he should not be making. You know, he said, like this guy said to me, he's making mistakes that a first-year guy should not be making at the end of his first year. Like that's how bad this is. It's stuff that it's like he's making some mistakes with his reads and how Sean McVay is setting this up that it's like he's a new quarterback and they're not okay with that. And this guy said to me, I asked him, you know, what happens this offseason? And he's like, well, you know, let's see how it finishes. He said, but I'll tell you this. John Wolford was a lot of fun to watch. And he's like, and I think Sean had a lot of fun coaching him, really likes what he brings to the table. Now, he wasn't saying that's the option here, but I think
it's the point. The point matters.
That's the point.
The point is that it sure does feel like Sean McVay, who is as media savvy as anybody, is kind of ready for something different. He needs that new look. I'm just saying. That's what it feels like, brother.
He's
like he's ready for somebody with some dynamism, my friend.
Well, to say after that game, you know, he putting the right now, he's the quarterback right now, but then he came out, you know, in the follow up, you know, the next day, and he says, you know, today, and he says, everything's being reviewed, you know, everything's under review or whatever the phrase was that they're reviewing everything. He knew what people were getting at that point, you know, like when you're asked a second time, hey, clarify what you said after this game.
He knew what he was saying.
He knew precisely what he was saying.
And I'm ready to see. I'm ready for that. Like I'm ready to see McVay with a more dual threat option. This is just where the league is headed. Like I'm sorry, it is. Like you got to be able to get outside the pocket and do stuff sometimes. And I get it. Like I totally understand from his perspective where he's at. Like I get it. Okay, fun question for you. Who have you heard? Because I know you connected to the Eagles organization some. So, like, which guy would you rather have right now, Goff or Wentz? Because I know you've heard things about both quarterbacks. So, if you got to take one, you've got to take one. Where are you going? Charles's face.
I would probably take Goff only because what makes me nervous about Wentz is that not only did you see regression, and then when you go back and you talk to people about the totality of his career there, and you have people that are talking to you about, you know, turnover luck. Go and look at Carson's turnover luck. These are people that were right there inside the organization. Go look at his turnover luck. It bothers them. And then really the rift that developed between Wentz and Peterson. And what I thought was really interesting too, and this probably is what kind of steers me off Wentz. Everybody loves him. Great guy. Everybody talks about how Carson is such a great guy. Somebody told me, this was really interesting, when I was kind of talking to all these different people about Doug Peterson's end there and how it all came about. And somebody said to me that Doug has struggled with Carson's stubbornness as a quarterback for a number of years. And what that tells me is that Doug has, when someone says a quarterback's stubbornness, it's stubbornness to coaching. Like, hey, here is what you're doing wrong.
Coaching.
Yes,
that's what that means.
Here's what you need to do.
That Marcus Peters had on him. He doesn't take coaching.
You don't. If you're now, I don't want to say, I want to be careful here because I don't want to push it all the way into the weight. Yeah, but look, if somebody's trying to tell you, here's like the mechanical flaws, or here's the thing, and you got to stick to this, and you have to be disciplined, and all these different things, and there's a pushback there. There's a problem getting that bridge crossed. That bothers me a little bit. I'm not going to say Goff's any better because look, you don't want to hear somebody saying, "Hey, he's making mistakes that first-year guys shouldn't be making." That's bad.
I'm making you take the guy, though. I made you pick. I made.
It's not a great pick. It's just not. It's not a great pick, man. Like it's a terrible pick. But here's the crux of why it's even more difficult than usual is that
they both got paid.
They both got paid, but here's the thing too. Wentz is more leaning into guys who can play off script and all those things, whereas Goff is absolutely not the off script guy. But Wentz gets hurt all the time. He's constantly hurt.
And I kind of like the fact that Goff at least he last week got benched for John Wolford in a way, came in and won the game.
Yeah, well, he was pissed. He was mad. He was really mad he got benched. Yeah, I mean,
there's something there with Goff, right? Like, hey, you don't want, but listen, I made you pick. Fun question, fun conversation. Let's give the Packers some love, though. At this point, after what they did to a defense that's been really, really strong, like the Rams defense with their split safety coverages and the way they get after you out of their quarters. And I know Aaron Donald was hurt, but this is a really good team, and they were coached really well defensively. And right now, what the Packers were able to do offensively against these guys, I'm just telling you, this is a good team. Like the Packers have one of the best offenses we've seen in the last 2 decades. Like seriously, it is that good. It is there with the 18 Chiefs. It is there with the 07 Patriots. They are there. Like these guys are basically impossible to stop. And a big reason is because Aaron Rodgers is trusting the offense. And that tells me how much faith he has in Matt LaFleur. He's playing within the scheme. And hey, man, LaFleur has proven a lot of people wrong. I just want to give some love to that offense because they are really, really, this offense is a lot better. I think, and I know this is a ramble, but hear me out, think about those other offenses I just named, man. How much acclaim did the 07 Patriots get with Randy Moss? There's a lot of critical acclaim. The 2018 Chiefs, a lot of critical acclaim. I just don't feel like this Packers team gets the same critical acclaim, even though they're as productive. This is a great offense. And I hope, and you know what I think will help people understand that if they win the Super Bowl, if they beat Tom Brady this week, that'd be very interesting. But that is a must-see game. Brady versus Rodgers, I couldn't be more ready for it.
I'm telling you, when I was watching them against the Rams, the Rodgers pump fake on Leonard Floyd run-in touchdown.
Sick, dude.
Was one of those moments where I'm like, this dude he just might win it this year. He is playing on a plateau where you don't see guys. He's just out of his mind. Everything he is doing is perfect. What that reminded me of, that was like that. It's like the Magic Johnson sort of the court sense, the understanding of where all the pieces are without having to really look or know, and then having the intuition just to do things that manipulate the athletes that you're playing against. For Rodgers to throw the little pump fake the way that he did and then just run it in, and you could see every bit. That guy is having a season where, I don't know, it just feels like all of the tumblers kind of locked in place this year for him. And I mean, mentally, physically, the confidence that the players have around him. Devontae Adams has been spectacular. You lose a left tackle is extremely important.
And a premium left tackle, too. There's
premium left tackle. Yeah,
absolutely. Guys, you had to work premium in once. But they lose a premium left tackle. They keep this thing going. Yep. Charles, can we also appreciate the importance of a strong run game? I know it's 2020, we don't think running matters, but it does. It does. Play action is extremely effective in today's football. It just is. And the fact these guys are able to run the ball so effectively, that opens up the scheme shot throws. That's the way you have to win.
This is what. Listen,
it
guys,
works.
This is what Pete Carroll is talking about. Run and put the defense into the scenarios in which we can take advantage of that. That is what Pete Carroll was talking about, and why Brian Schottenheimer got fired. That's why running the football matters. That's why manipulating. Everything in the NFL is about manipulation. Everything doesn't matter. One-on-one matchup manipulation, scheme manipulation.
All of it manipulation.
Yeah, coaching manipulation. It's every single thing that these teams do. It's about manipulation, and if you are a one-dimensional team, it is extremely hard for you to manipulate another team that isn't. And you're right. I mean, I don't think there's any question that the Packers are running a great scheme and that Matt LaFleur's done a fantastic job. And by the way, Matt LaFleur unquestionably, to me, deserves Coach of the Year votes. Yep. I told you last week I thought Kevin Stefanski deserved Coach of the Year votes. I think Matt LaFleur deserves Coach of the Year votes. So all four of these teams are – look at the coaches in all four of these teams. There's no like, hey, that guy hasn't been, isn't considered brilliant at what he does. Bruce Arians worked with every freaking quarterback on earth, brings in Tom Brady. Tom Brady has one of his best statistical seasons ever. Matt LaFleur has gotten everything he could possibly have gotten, honestly, out of the offense 2 years in a row now. Sean McDermott has been fantastic since he stepped into the Bills organization. Andy Reid. This is why coaches get paid the way that they do, and why teams are sitting there looking at Matt Nagy and going, I don't know, man. There's a reason why some of these other coaches, you're just like, okay, we haven't.
Which leads me into something I want to talk about quickly, just as a sample for our midweek podcast, right? We've got some coaching hires that are coming up. Charles and I just want to touch on some of them that have already been announced and some things we're hearing very, very quickly. And the fact you mentioned, hey, the play caller, Matt Nagy, it had me thinking about Atlanta and Arthur Smith, who's going to be their man. And you've heard me rave about him all year long. Very few coordinators do a better job marrying the run and pass, which we've talked about, and using play action off that than Arthur Smith. What I can tell you is obviously – there's a sense, Terry Fontenot's going to get that job, right?
The GM job, yeah.
Yep. And there's definitely an understanding from the people I talked to throughout the league that pairing this Shanahan system that Arthur Smith comes out of with Matt Ryan again, and the way he calls plays with the young offensive line that I think is going to keep getting better. If they have to salvage Matt Ryan, like if they have to keep him, which they should, because I just don't know if you can get the value out of that now. I'm with it, man. Like, I think that will help that offense kind of get rolling. But they also need to make sure that the defense can actually get some stops sometimes. But I really like that hire for Atlanta. I think Arthur Smith is one of the league's best play callers, and he actually fits what they want to do. And he already fits the system and scheme. Like his scheme fits the players they have. Where are you at on that?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think when you look at the scheme, it is a very good scheme fit for him stepping in. And again, this was a guy who I had heard after Doug Marrone. I thought, I'm sorry, not Doug Marrone, Brian Daboll. I had heard Brian Daboll, was all the top coaching candidate out there. And then as things kind of progressed, I had other guys that are like, I think Arthur Smith might actually be the guy who's going to end up surfacing as being the greatest hire from this class.
Man. There's a reason he had 3 offers reportedly. So
I'm curious though to see how he handles ownership in Atlanta, because it is very different than Tennessee, where Tennessee wasn't, as hands-on, and there's all these different things, and all these. It was pretty stable when he was in that environment in terms of how it was structured, the way the power flowed, who was in charge, all these things. Atlanta is historically has not been stable. They've moved the 53 around. They've had, they moved Rich McKay out of the general manager position, but not out of the building. The 53 went from, Thomas Dimitroff to Dan Quinn. Mike Smith was there. Mike Smith, and goes from Mike Smith to Dan Quinn. And then during the totality of both of those coaching runs, Arthur Blank was someone who was involved, who you did have to, quote unquote, as I said in the past, water as an owner. So there's more on your plate as a head coach in Atlanta than maybe a lot of people realize. And it'll be interesting to see if he's prepared to kind of handle that, because I think the last couple of guys, it was a little bit of an eye-opening experience.
Eye-opening experiences is always a great way to describe the New York Jets job. And their man's going to be Robert Saleh, the San Francisco 49ers defensive.
That was an interesting hire. Yeah,
it is an interesting hire. all I can say is that I think there are some people who are very interested in seeing how he handles like that spotlight there, personality wise. Like, different cat. Like, and that's a demanding job as far as like being in front of the media and handling the media. I can tell you, there's definitely people who are like, okay, let's see how he handles that on a personal level. You have to manage a lot there, personality wise, in that market that you don't have to in others. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it was. So early on in that search, I had a chance to talk to somebody there, and they told me like we're gonna. It was interesting what they said because I was told we're not looking for a specialist, we're looking for a program leader, and I think what they meant was because I think I leaned on, hey, do you think that like Brian Daboll is somebody that's going to get involved here, sort of, and what I was told was, hey, we're not just going to go out and look for a guy who can coach a quarterback for us. They wanted a program leader. I thought that would lean into maybe someone who'd, done it before. Somebody like, hey, maybe even like a Marvin Lewis, like someone who had success in another organization, had shown the ability to lead an entire organization, particularly a bad organization like Cincinnati. But then, they take Robert Saleh, who I guess leans into, the program leader in terms of what his mentality is. And clearly he must have had the plan in place because from what I was told, Joe Douglas, the general manager there, he never really had any kind of relationship or ties to Robert Saleh until they talked to each other. And once they started to go through that process, that really changed, what Joe Douglas bought into whatever Robert Saleh was selling and walked away from it feeling like this is the program leader we were looking for.
And I love the fact that you said that, Steve, because let's just say, look, all indications are the Lions are going to hire Dan Campbell. And that's an interesting hire in the sense that they've also hired Brad Holmes to be their general manager. And Campbell is a guy who's apparently close with Chris Spielman, who is an assistant to Rod Wood, the team CEO now. Feels like that hire has a lot of Spielman all over it. But I'm just going to say, I don't know what kind of connection Holmes and Campbell have. And that's always weird when you pair people together in the GM coach role that kind of, if they don't already have the prior relationship, you know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, maybe if they do have it, I'm not aware of it. Like, I'm sure I'll know more by our midweek podcast, but I'm just saying there are initially some questions about how well those two know each other and whether or not this might be the continuation of the same old Lions, not knowing how to make it all mesh. Go ahead.
I'll save my thoughts for the midweek podcast. I'll just say that I'm going to lean into the fact that ownership came out before this whole process started and said, we're going out and we're going to get a well-vetted and experienced. They used the word experienced head coach and general manager team. This is not and I'm not saying it's bad. It is an experienced head coach. So what they said they were looking for, they did not go and fulfill that unless there is some avenue of the experience that they meant that was not readily available. Because there were definitely far more experienced candidates. Doesn't mean it's bad. Just means that I think the Lions once again have sent mixed messages. We'll talk about that, and I'll talk more about that in the midweek.
There's stuff coming. Listen, in the midweek podcast, we'll talk about Urban Meyer to the Jags.
Yeah, right? We're going to get into all these. This is going to be a lot.
Pretty much. We'll get into Brandon Staley and the Chargers. Yes. That was a hire. I mean, he had like a couple interviews, and then they just hired him just like that. Like, he had another one lined up, and he just immediately, he just took this one. That surprised people. The Houston job is still open. We're already starting to see, Eric Bieniemy's going to get shut out again. We're already starting to see that. We'll have plenty to talk about, on Wednesday, won't we? Because I think the Eagles job is interesting. Where they might go for that's interesting, and what Houston does is going to be interesting too. So I know both of us are looking forward to it. We hope you guys join us for that. But before we go, we are going to take questions. And we're going to do that just because we appreciate you guys joining us. And we do. Those of you who have asked questions, we want to reward you for hanging in here with us. So here we go. Let's run through them real quick, okay? Yep. Josh Steinbeck says, do you think Sean Payton – hey, what's going on, Josh? Thanks for joining us. He says, do you think Sean Payton wanted to move on from Brees before this season? Do you think they have a better chance of making the Super Bowl without him? I don't know. I just real quick, I'm just saying I felt like in a lot of ways the Taysom Hill offense was harder to defend in some ways. Like they took more vertical shots. They did in some ways, but I don't know. What do you say?
Let me put it to you this way. Had Drew retired, Tom Brady's probably a Saint this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Honestly, like I'm just going to tell you straight up. Like I literally remember sitting in an airport and someone from the organization asking me if I thought Drew would take a TV job. And obviously it wasn't Sean Payton, wasn't Mickey Loomis. It was someone else in the organization. And he said, do you think there's a chance Drew takes a TV job? And, I was like, I've talked to some guys at CAA. It sounds like there's a lot of money on the table for him. And I was given a very, 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 very strong indication that Tom Brady's first choice would have, and we learned later it was one that wasn't necessarily on the table. And everyone said, oh, it's the 49ers. Tom wanted to go to the 49ers. That's not what I heard. I heard Tom wanted to go to the Saints. And that had Drew Brees retired, that's where Tom ultimately would have ended up.
Do you think they're better off if that's the case?
Probably. I mean, if Tom was there. Look, I'm sorry, but like you put Tom
pushes it downfield.
Look, I mean, I'm sorry. Look what Tom done in Tampa. Look, guys. Look what Tom has done. Let me use it, guys. Look what Tom has done in Tampa Bay. I think that Tom would have been fantastic in New Orleans. So I'll just say, I don't know that it means Sean would have wished Drew would have retired. I don't want to say that because there's an immense amount of respect there. Drew's earned a lot in New Orleans. He's earned the right to walk away when he wants to. I think Sean respects that 100%. I'm just saying that had things played out a certain way, it would have been interesting.
Oh, he definitely does, because in this NFL, in this league, you don't often get the chance to leave on your own accord. And he was afforded the chance to come back with that team having at least one fatal flaw, which is the vertical ball. So definitely showed the amount of respect Sean Payton had for him. Question from Neil Blair, a loyal listener. How you doing, Neil? Question, does Andy Reid play call differently? Does Andy Reid call plays differently against Buffalo if Mahomes does play? Maybe less option plays, putting them at risk? I would say probably, but in general, like if you take the field, like the philosophy here has been like, that all of it is open to you. So, I'm just telling you that's how it works there. I'm not saying that's how it should be, but knowing Andy would have been the AFC Championship game if Mahomes does play, which again, people here are very optimistic about. I think they're gonna call to win the game no matter what that looks like.
Yeah, they're too close. I think it's just unless there is something there that they really, 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 really need to protect. I think you probably just call it the way you call it. And honestly, I think you say to Pat, you tell us, like, you let us know, like, do we need to do something different? We're judging this based on your feel for it. Just let us know what we need to do to protect you. If you feel like you're free and loose and we can call it the way we would normally call it, great, let's do that.
Two fun questions from loyal viewers, Sam Gladney and Will Weber. Will asked me, no hat, Terez? Not today. I'm repping Fulham, my EPL team. And Charles, your question is, Charles, what have you been drinking? I got to tell you, your drink has been a popular question. People want to know, what is that? Because somebody in here posted, like, you must have like that on constant refill, because as much as you've been drinking it, you're not seeing anything in it.
We're a big coffee household here, and we
premium
had this
coffee, folks. I once had Charles on a 30-minute tangent about his coffee.
Yeah, that is true. We actually have two like really big coffee makers. That's how ridiculous it is. We have like this ridiculous Italian grinds the beans one thing at a time. Like that was inherited, by the way, in the relationship. That entered into the relationship. And then I got used to that one, and I really loved that one. And then Dawn's mom gave us an espresso, and I was kind of uppity about it. I was like, we have one that grinds the beans. Why would I use little cups and all this crap? Now I'm hooked on it. Like I'll tell you what, man, espresso, it's not cheap. It's definitely not cheap for what you pay. But I am a huge coffee drinker, like a ridiculously, it's a crutch. Absolutely. I know if I haven't had like 2 cups of coffee, if I've only had one, like 3 o'clock, I am dragging. I am just dragging ass.
Yeah. more than a few times you were like, I need some coffee. I'm not,
Oh
I'm
my
not
God.
myself today. Like, it's so funny.
I'll make coffee. Dawn gets whacked out because it'll be like 9 o'clock at night and I'm going to write, and it's usually like on a Sunday and I'll be making coffee. And she's like, what are you doing? Are you making coffee right now? And I'm like, I've also been laying in bed and feeling my legs shake. I'm like, I probably had too many cups today.
Oh, that's great. Okay. Remember to check out the Yahoo Sports College podcast, posted up with Chris Haynes. They dropped an episode with Isaiah Thomas you might want to check out recently. And the Yahoo Fantasy Football forecast. They're still rolling through the playoffs with betting and DFS advice. Follow me on Twitter at Terez Paylor. Follow Charles on Twitter at Charles Robinson. Give our ace producer, Brett Rader, a follow as well. And Charles, tell them what else they need to know.
Leave us a 5-star review. Ask people to watch the live streams. Awesome. And share the show, especially I would say this week's midweek show. I think we're going to talk a lot about the head coaching hires. We're going to talk some more about these games, but I'm just telling you, I think we're going to have some dirt on a lot of the stuff that went down in some of these head coaching hires. I think it'll be pretty interesting. And frankly, it's probably time to have another sort of extended Eric Bieniemy conversation, just because we're stuck in this, this kind of same loop over and over again. And I think it's worth having another conversation about why exactly we're stuck here.
Yeah, we'll be ready for that. That's right. And you guys, listen, we'll be ready for it. We'll deliver. And I like to think that's one of the reasons we've got a 5-star rating, perfect 5-star rating on 1,000+ reviews. So thank you for making Yahoo Sports NFL podcast your epicenter for pro football news. He's Charles. I'm Terez. We will be back in a few days for the midweek podcast with plenty of dirt. We'll see you guys then. Thank you for watching. Peace.